This is the revolution.
Political leader of the United National Congress and the best Prime Minister Trinidad and Tobago has ever seen, the Honorable Kamla Prasad Bisesa, parliamentary colleagues both in the upper and lower house, members of the local government fraternity, brothers and sisters of the UNC all. You know, in local parlance, it is often said that mouth open and story jump out. Well, today in the Parliament, mouth open and story jump out. We have been dealing with the issue of the Judith Jones report as it relates to child abuse in Trinidad and Tobago. But MP Indar Singh raised a question in the Parliament today. And MP Indar Singh asked the Minister of Gender and Child Affairs, between the period 2019 to the year 2021, how many instances of child abuse have been reported to the Children's Authority? Brothers and sisters, when I tell you mouth open and story jump out, a meek, weak and feeble Minister Ayanna Webster Roy said 376. 376 instances of child abuse in this country since 2019 reported to the Children's Authority. But only a few weeks ago, we got to find out in the Parliament that a Justice Judith Jones report said that there's massive and wanton abuse of children in this country. When Camille Robinson Regis would have you believe that in 1997, Basdeo Pandey, Manohar Ramcharan, Kamla Prasad Bisesa, and Ramesh Lawrence Maraj sat on their hands and did nothing. Tonight, I want to ask Camille Robinson Regis, were you not sitting in the cabinet of Prime Minister Keith Rowley when 376 reports of child abuse went undiscussed, went unnoticed, and children continue to suffer at the hands of their perpetrators while you continue to wine and jam with the taxpayers' dollars in this country? Brothers and sisters, this government has gone entirely silent on this child abuse issue. Just yesterday, we were told in the Express newspaper that one children's home in Tobago has been shut down because the Children's Authority refused to give them a license. I want to tell you this. The Justice Judith Jones report says in the black and white that for 7 years, this administration, with then Attorney General Faris Al-Rawi, who moved from a lawyer to today being a bush lawyer in Bridgestone, for 7 years, they did not proclaim the legislation. In 2016, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, up to today, they have not proclaimed the legislation as it relates to the licensing of children's homes. Today, the Express is reporting that they have refused to give a license to a children's home in Tobago. Tonight, I'm asking the Prime Minister, because the Prime Minister is a minister with line responsibility for these children's homes. Why did they not proclaim the legislation for 7 years? Up to today, that legislation remains proclaimed. The only people with responsibility of proclaiming legislation, which means it may be on our statute books, it means it passed in the Parliament, but it could only be enacted in law if the Cabinet of Trinidad and Tobago proclaims the legislation and tells the President, we want to put this in force. For 7 years up to today, that legislation remains languishing and it has not been proclaimed. Brothers and sisters, I've spoken about several of the recommendations that are contained in the Justice Judith Jones report. For the past couple weeks and months, the media in a big song and dance, they have been reporting only about this SABGA report. But what about the Justice Judith Jones report? Naked told you tonight, it is in the interest of particular media houses to talk about the SABGA report and not talk about the Justice Judith Jones report. But we have told you, if they try to shut us up in the Parliament, we will talk about it outside of the Parliament, and that is what we are doing here today. When we told them when we told them to deal with the licensing regime, when we told them to deal with the alternative locations, yesterday we are being told of a home, a child support home being burnt down, and we asked in the parliament today, what have you done with those children? How many children have you relocated? How many of the abusers have you taken out of the homes? The minister, in a weak and feeble attempt, got up and she said, well, I don't have that information in front of me. If you don't have that information, who the hell has that information? Who is protecting our nation's children? If that is your responsibility, when we told them about establishing a children's ombudsman, that is what we call low-hanging fruit, that tomorrow or tonight, if they want to establish the office of a children's ombudsman, they could do so, but they do not have the political will to protect our nation's children, because we are not surprised, you know. Can you expect a man like Faris Al-Rawi to protect your children when he doesn't even recognize his own? Brothers and sisters, a few years ago, when I first became a member of parliament, together with Mrs. Kamala Pasabi-Sessa, our leader, we told them to establish a sex offenders registry with a component in it for pedophiles. So when Mrs. Pasabi-Sessa stands on a platform and says with conviction that the PNM really means the pedophile national movement, we know what we are talking about. You see, there are some questions that we must ask. And one of those questions is, why is the PNM mortally afraid of a public sex offenders registry? When in 2016 we called for this matter, they refused to make it public. Refused, you know, in 2016. Do you know 6 weeks ago, after passing the legislation in 2018, a few weeks ago, they came back to the nation's parliament and they say, well, we want to make it public. When we told them to do that since in 2016, what were they so mortally afraid of? Who were they so mortally afraid of that would have ended up on the sex offenders registry from the pedophile national movement? Brothers and sisters, you know, earlier today, I heard a member of parliament, and I told you earlier, mouth open and story jump out, right? So Mrs. Pasabi-Sessa contributed to the debate in the parliament today, and I heard one member of parliament jump up and trying to denigrate and mock Mrs. Pasabi-Sessa. That member of parliament got up and said, well, I only throw corn. I didn't call the foul. Well, you throw the corn, but tonight I will call the foul. Because you see, in the Justice Judy Jones report, it speaks of a short, stocky man with ras who became a PNM candidate for a seat in Port of Spain. And I want to ask that particular gentleman who made that comment today if he knows a PNM activist called Twiggy. Because you see, in the general election campaign of 2020, Twiggy was running up and down a seat in Port of Spain talking about that same stocky, short-hair Rasta man. So when you want to throw corn, I will call foul. I will call foul. So when Mrs. Pasabi-Sessa tells you about the pedophile national movement, we don't have to go far. And that is why sometimes in the parliament, when we tell you that what they don't want us to say there, we will say it here, we will continue to fight for you, and we will call them out for what and who they are. Brothers and sisters, there's a lot more to be said over the next couple of weeks and months as it relates to this Justice Judy Jones report. And we will not give up, nor will we be silent, as Jayanti told you. No amount of injunction, no amount of political banter, because we are not afraid of any of them. And we will continue fighting for truth, peace, bread, and justice from this platform led by the Honorable Kamala Pasabi-Sessa, our superstar. So look forward, more to come, and we thank you.